Hi guys, James at Rampant Lion Reviews again for you today with another beer review. For this one, we are going to head over to Finland once again, and that of course means that we're going to have a look at yet another Riku beer. So first and foremost, a massive shout out and thank you to Riku Sanaxanaho, my Finnish beer mule. It's thanks to him that you guys are getting to enjoy some Finnish reviews here on the channel. He's responsible for basically all of the Finnish stuff that we review on here, but he always sends me some really nice beers, and we're going to be working our way through these over the next little while, so definitely looking forward to that. But the beer we're going to have a look at today is from a brewery that I have reviewed things from before. I would say that these guys are a very solid all-round brewery. We've tried quite a few different styles from them, and the one we're looking at today is a style that I very much enjoy, but one that I haven't tried from these guys yet actually, although Riku tells me this is a pretty nice one, and yeah, it's quite old school, which I'm also looking forward to. So needless to say, I'm very curious to see what this one is going to have in store for us. Hopefully it's another good beer, hopefully it makes for an interesting review, and as always, I hope that you guys enjoy my take on this one as well. So yeah, for this review then, we are going to head up to Oulu, Riku's hometown in the northwest of Finland, and we're going to have a look at another one of his local breweries again. So this one comes to you from Maistila Panimo, and this is called 999, although strangely, it is batch number 666, so I will need to check exactly what we should call this beer when publishing the video. But this one, regardless, is a West Coast IPA. It comes in at 5.4% ABV. It's one of their latest releases as well, and at the time of filming, I should say, and this is an old school sort of sea hop West Coast IPA, although there are a few non-sea hops in there as well. But yeah, this should be very, very nice. I'm curious to see what this is going to have in store for us. So, as always with my reviews then, I'll tell you a little bit about the brewery before we taste the beer. If you want to get straight to the tasting, just fast forward. All the usual links are in the video description below. That's the brewery website, the link to my other reviews that I've done from Maistila Panimo before, and we will add a few more to that at some point in the near future. I think this is maybe review number 4 or so that we've done from this brewery, but their beers are always pretty solid. But there's all the usual social media down there. If you want to see more reviews, do please consider subscribing to the channel, and remember you can go into the channel homepage and search for beer using the geography based tagging system. Put your hometown, state, county, whatever in the search bar, and if I've reviewed beers from your local area, they will pop up. And of course, check out the playlist of beers from different countries. You'll find this one in the Finnish playlist along with a number of other really nice things. So yeah, let's crack on then and chat a little bit about Maistila Panimo. Onto my brewery notes. So Maistila Panimo, as I've mentioned to you already, are based in Oulu in Finland, and the company was founded back in 2015 by the Harju brothers. This is Joni and Riku. But apparently Riku first developed a curiosity about beer during a trip to Germany, the Netherlands and Belgium, and this was where he first really started to explore different styles of beer. But after this, he kind of started to appreciate the whole European brewing culture, and he attended the Copenhagen Beer Festival and really enjoyed the atmosphere. And then someone suggested to him that he tried brewing beer for himself, and this stuck with him. But he called Joni and told him about his idea, and then a few months later they bought a 20-litre Braumeister home brewing kit and started experimenting together, and this took place back in about 2011 apparently. But in the very early part of their commercial story, Maistila collaborated with other local breweries who helped them buy up their own equipment, and then they released their first commercial beers in August of 2015. But over the last few years, they've been working to build up their brewing capacity, and they've developed a lot of new recipes, and as of November 2022, they've produced around 285 different kinds of beer, and they're still producing around 60,000 litres per year. One of the things with Finland, if it is still the case, as it was last time, is that the taxes are banded in Finland based on how much volume you produce. So quite often the breweries will grow to a certain amount and then stop for a while before they do it again when the laws liberalises. That just seems to be how it works in Finland. But yeah, these guys are producing around 60,000 litres of beer per year, and in October this year of 2022, they actually announced that they would have a pause over the first half of 2023. It seems that the guys have just got themselves kind of, they say they just want a little break basically. So hopefully we'll maybe get some more different beers from Maistila next year with next year's Riku box. We'll need to see how that goes. But yeah, Maistila on a little pause for the first half of 2023. We'll need to just see how things go with that. But yeah, that is all I can really tell you about Maistila Panimo for the moment. If you want to learn more about these guys, you can of course check out the brewery website. You can follow them on Facebook and Instagram, and you can check out the Untappd page as well to learn a little bit more about some of their different beers that they've done. It's quite an impressive number, actually, 285 different kinds of beer for a brewery that's only producing like 60,000 litres per year. That is pretty damn impressive. But yeah, as I say, check out those links, but let's get on and actually have a taste of this beer itself. So, as I mentioned earlier, this one is a 5.4% West Coast IPA. You can see plain black bottle cap on this one. It's a 330 milliliter bottle. But yeah, I think you can see it's upside down there. You can see ERA number 666. So yeah, it is batch number 666. I don't know why they would put the label like that kind of upside down. Maybe they would get in trouble from the government for being Satanists or some shit. I don't know. Who knows? But yeah, nicely presented. This one, I do like, you can see the beer bats in the trees there as well. That's kind of cool actually. But yeah, you can also see on the bottle, where is it? You can see the Maistila Panimo symbol there, the little fox. But it looks very, very good. But as we said, this is a 5.4% West Coast IPA. It contains barley malt, but also a little bit of oat. So this is quite interesting. It's not unheard of. I think Sculpin, if I remember correctly, was one that used a little bit of oat in it, but mainly West Coast IPAs use only barley malt. But the hop bill in this one is Comet, Centennial, Simcoe, Cascade, Amarillo and Columbus. So we know all these hops quite well. Comet, I think, is about 12% alpha acid. It gives you a lovely big kind of pineapple note from what I remember. Centennial is about the same, but it gives you a big kind of lemony zesty character. Simcoe again is the same, but kind of soft, juicy passion fruit. Cascade is the old school, the really old school American, that's the first high alpha acid hop, 8%, and it usually gives you that nice, in a West Coast IPA I find it always gives you this kind of figgy, sort of fruity and grapefruity type thing. Amarillo, of course, about 12% alpha acid as well, big zesty orangey characters. Then Columbus is going to be your bittering hop in this one. Columbus is going to give you that big spicy floral aromatic quality in it. So yeah, all of these American hops, very nice. Comet, Centennial, Simcoe, Cascade, Amarillo and Columbus. This is proper old school, this one. But yeah, let's crack this beer open and see what we have then. I'm curious to see what a Maistila West Coast IPA is going to be like. So let's do this. Let's do it. Ooh. A little bit of smoke on the opening, of course. We'll sugar the last little bit up. And there we are. So this does look pretty nice, I have to say. Interesting colour. So yeah, before the head disappears on this one then, you can see that the beer has poured with about what would we say, a half or a 2/3 finger of a frothy, kind of cream coloured head. It's not, or maybe ivory coloured head is a good way to describe it. It's not perfect white, but yeah, it certainly does look really, really nice. Yeah, you can see that head is just fading away to a bit of a thinner foamy layer on top, but yeah, you've got some nice, that ring around the edge of the glass is going to linger there. In terms of the colour, this one is leaning towards quite a bit of a darker amber. So remember, the colour of your beers can depend on, one, the type of malt that you use. This goes a long way to determining your EBC rating. Two, the length of your wort boil is going to play a role, because the longer you boil the wort, the more the sugars caramelise, and thus you get a darker colour of beer. Any barrel aging that you do or any adjuncts that you put in will affect the colour of the beer too, but when it comes to IPAs of pretty much any description, you're not going to struggle. You're not really going to have to care about that variable right enough. But this one, to me, it tells me there is some sort of caramel and things in here. And I've always felt there's two different directions you can take a West Coast IPA. They can be more biscuity and bready, such as Pliny the Elder, or they can be more oily and caramelly, such as, Sierra Nevada Torpedo. So they can go in two different directions. I've got a feeling just from the colour of this one, it's going to go more in the Torpedo direction. But yeah, not too much in the way of visible carbonation with this one. One or two big bubbles sticking toward the side of the glass, a few little ones going up toward the bottom of the head there. But yeah, overall it does look pretty damn nice, I have to say. Yeah, appearance wise, nothing untoward about this one. It does have a degree of light haziness to it, but yeah, I do like how this one goes together. It looks pretty nice. Nothing untoward about the appearance. Let's have a closer look at the aroma then and just see how we get on. I'm very curious about this. Oh yeah, that does smell pretty nice. Now, I'm hoping that this is not going to be one of these more modern takes on the West Coast IPA, because quite often you'll get a beer that has the similar flavour profile but it just doesn't have the big bitterness that you want from this style. But I will say straight away the aroma of this one is very nice. You've got lovely big oily fruity character. It's got quite a nice it has got quite a nice bright green quality to it, which is good. So yeah, nice kind of greenness to it. Good little bit of oily yeah, a good little bit of kind of oily brown sugar and things like that. And then yeah, you've got the nice kind of fruity characters as well. So yeah, it gives you everything you would want from a West Coast IPA. But let's break this down for you a wee bit more and just describe it that little bit more in depth. So when you take the aroma in, you've got a lovely little bit of a kind of fresh bread crusty character forming the backbone of the beer. And I'd say it's like a fresh white bread crust, but then above that you're getting a mix of like wholemeal brown bread and also white brown bread in there as well. So that's quite interesting how all of that goes together. So yeah, good little bit of bread crust in there, some brown wholemeal bread, good little bit of white bread in there as well. And yeah, the way that that goes together, I think, is very very nice. The malt base, of course, above that, I do get the feeling, like I say, that this is going to be a more kind of Sierra Nevada torpedo type West Coast IPA. This one, so yeah, so see, you've got a bit of bread crust. There is a little tiny touch of like woodiness in there as well, but yeah, brown wholemeal bread, white bread on top of that, and then you start to get some of the kind of brown sugary elements out of this beer. So for me, on top of that, you have yeah, on top of that, you've definitely got, you get a bit of a straight up caramel in this one. You can smell that in the middle of the nose there. So a bit of a straight up caramel. Then you've also got a little bit of a more kind of McVitie's digestive biscuity sort of thing. There's also something in this beer that tells me they might have used a little bit of like fruit sugar or something like that. I can just smell it in here. Like quite often in West Coast IPAs they would use a little bit, was it grape sugar or something like this. It's not uncommon to use a little bit of grape sugar or fruit sugar in West Coast IPAs, and there's just something about the malt base that's telling me they might have used a little bit of that in here. Um, so yeah, that's really interesting actually. So you can smell the sweet caramel. You can, yeah. So there's the sweet caramel in there. There's a little bit of the McVitie's digestive biscuit, and then yeah, you've just got that little bit of kind of fruity, perfumey, sugary character mixing in with all of that. So yeah, it actually builds a good bridge with the fruity side of the hops too. But yeah, the malt base is pretty much as you would expect from this one. It's kind of somewhere in the middle. It's not too oily and caramelly, and it still retains a little bit of that kind of bready, biscuity side of things. So curious to see how this is going to turn out when we actually taste the beer. Um, yeah, I think that's everything we need to say about the malty side of it. I do wonder how much of the kind of smoothness in this one is coming from the oats as well. That's another interesting perspective. But yeah, that is pretty good. So on the hoppy side of things then, yeah, this one, the more you smell of it, the more you start to get that big kind of deep green component that you expect of the West Coast IPAs. Now remember, there are three different types of hopping. Early edition hopping, first hour of the wort boil, that gives you most of your bitterness. Pretty much all bitterness you'll get from the hops in that stage. Late edition hopping, last half hour of the wort boil, that gives you a little bit of bitterness, but also a good bit of flavour and aroma. And then you have a dry hopping after, which comes after the wort boil, and that gives you all flavour and aroma. West Coast IPAs use all three. The kind of more modern, I guess we could say, New England IPAs rely on the latter two, but sometimes have a little bit of early edition hopping. But with this one, you can smell it's got that nice big deep green component to it. A good little bit of earthiness in there. I think I don't know, the earthiness will probably come from the Columbus in this one, but you can smell a little bit of that spicy floral character. You can smell the spicy floral character that you would expect from the, yeah, there's that spicy floral character that you would expect from Columbus for sure, but then you've also got a nice bit of grassy character in this one, and I would say the green component overall smells pretty oily in this beer. That is definitely fair to say. So yeah, a little touch of earthiness, nice spicy floral aromaticity, and also a good little bit, pardon me, also a good little bit of that kind of more oily, grassy character in there too. So yeah, I like how that goes together in this beer. Yeah, so on the fruity side of things then, so fruity side of the beer, for me, yeah, the fruity side of the beer is kind of what you'd expect, to be honest. It's nice. So I'm absolutely getting a little bit of the kind of grapefruit out of the beer for sure, and it's Cascade is you can smell the Cascade in this. For me, Cascade is just a very very distinctive hop because one of my local pilsners back home in Scotland is a Czech style Cascade hopped pilsner. So can pick that hop out a mile away. Harvesting Schiehallion for those of you that are wondering. But anyway, so you can smell the Cascade base in this beer. You get a good little bit, you get a little touch of the grapefruit, of course, but there's also that kind of almost figgy, sultani type thing that you get from Cascade in this beer. But on top of that, you've got some nice. On top of that, you do have some nice oily passion. There's a little bit of an oily kind of passion fruity note, which will be the Simcoe, and that gives you some more. You do get a good bit of pineapple in there as well, which is going to be the comet. And underneath that, there are little hints of apricot and papayas and stuff like this, which you're always going to get in these kind of beers. And then yeah, at the front of the nose, it's all about the big oily Amarillo orange. I'm just trying to think, did we actually miss any? Just I think maybe the Centennial. I'm not getting too much of the lemony character that you'd normally get from Centennial, to be honest. For me, this beer, it's more about the kind of sultana figgy notes from the Cascade. Yeah, you get a bit of the tropical fruit in there, the passion fruit and the pineapple from the Simcoe and the Comet, and then yeah, the juicy orange note at the front of the nose from the Amarillo. But yeah, I'm not getting too much in the way of the kind of lemony zesty qualities that you would get from brain's not working. But I'm not getting the kind of lemony zesty qualities that you would normally get from Centennial, of course. But yeah, it's an interesting smelling beer. This one, I have to say, it's proper old school. This takes you back a good few years to when I was first kind of getting into IPAs. But as I always say, take a wee bit of time and just enjoy the aroma of it before you get stuck in. But this does smell pretty damn nice, and I'm very very curious. So yeah, let's get stuck into this one then and see what we have. So this one is it's either called 999 or they're going to call it back 666. I'll check Untappd later and ask Riku. But yeah, this one is the new West Coast IPA, 5.4% ABV from Maistila Panimo in Oulu in Finland. Let's get stuck in. Slàinte, skål, cheers. Oh yeah, that is pretty nice. I'm going to say straight away, the first thing with this beer you'll notice it's actually very light and very drinkable. For me, if I was tasting this, I would think, oh yeah, it's like a West Coast session IPA. It is kind of like that, and at 5.4%, you probably can say it is a session IPA. For me, normally, I would always think like an IPA has to be like 6.5, something like this. So yeah, for me, if anything, if an IPA is around the kind of 5% mark, I would really consider it a session IPA. Of course, there is this debate about yeah what percentage you should say session, like is it under 5 or what. But to me, a session IPA is kind of like, to me a session IPA is like sort of 4 to maybe 5.5, something like that. So yeah, maybe 4 to 6%, I would say. But yeah, anyway, that's another matter. But yeah, this, I have to say, on first impression with this one, it's very clean. It does give you the bitterness you want from this style. Maybe not quite as heavily bitter as some of the other ones we've had in the past, but you've got the oily fruitiness, you've got the nice kind of smoothness and sweetness in the malt base, and the good green component. So it's a really nicely done all round beer, this one actually. I like how it goes together. But yeah, the way this beer goes about its business, I think, is very very nice. So it gets a thumbs up from me. This one, it is nice and drink. It is nice and drinkable for sure. So yeah, what do we say about this one? Middle of the palate. Then we'll start off as we always do. The backbone of this beer, you absolutely do get some of that nice kind of bread crusty character just forming the backbone of the beer. That is the backbone of this beer. As you move further forward, it's actually quite a dry bread crust you get in this one. So yeah, you get that nice dry kind of, it's almost like a kind of brown bready or slightly toasty bread crust. You can feel that dryness in the back, all the way from the back of your palate up to the front of the middle third. So that's sitting there. Further forward in the middle third of the palate, you've got that nice little, you do have that nice little bit of woodiness in there. So you get grainy bread crust, a little bit of woodiness. On top of that, you can feel there's a little bit of a kind of wholemeal. You do get that wholemeal brown bready character in there, and then above that, you start to get the white bready layer as well. So you can feel it's very layered, this beer, in the base. But I would say that this beer does build a bit of bitterness the further into the aftertaste. It's also a good little bit of a kind of grainy. It's got a good little bit of grainy dryness as well, which I do quite like. So yeah, the way that that goes together, I think is pretty interesting. It's old. I mean, this is really old school. This beer, you can feel on top of the white bready layer, you can feel a little bit of smoothness, and I wonder if that's the oaty character coming out of the beer. I think what the oats are doing, I've not paid too much attention to that, of course, because oats are not commonly used in West Coast IPAs. But like I say, Ballast Point Sculpin, I'm pretty sure, is one example of that. It's not uncommon to use a little bit of wheat or a little bit of oats in the West Coast IPA, but for the most part, these beers are all barley malt. But yeah, you do get a little bit of a kind of smooth, almost just oaty layer above the white bread, and then you start to get the brown, sugary notes out of this one. So in the dead centre of your palate, you do have a little bit of that kind of boozy, sweet sort of caramelly note, and you can feel that just as you move out from the dead centre of your palate, it just kind of mellows out a little bit. You do almost have a very slight Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotch type flavour to it, and then as you reach the kind of edges, as you reach the edges of that middle part of your palate, yeah, you've got a wee bit of a kind of more McVitie's digestive biscuity type character to this one. So yeah, the way that that goes together is quite nice actually. Um, so yeah, the way that the this beer goes about its business is really nice. But in the further into the aftertaste you go, you start to get more of that kind of Werther's Original butter candy, butterscotchy type thing out of this beer. So yeah, I do quite like how I do like how all of that goes together actually. Um, yeah, malt base in this one is quite nice. It's got a little bit of rawness to it as well, which is kind of interesting. It's almost got a little bit of that kind of raw, old school, homebrewed type flavour to it in a sense. So that's interesting with this one. I'd be curious to know what yeast they're using with this one, because it does feel quite familiar. I don't know if it could be like an old school USO5 or some kind of variant of that. But yeah, there is something that just feels familiar about the yeasty characters in this beer as well. But I think we've covered the middle third of the palate quite well with this beer already. Let's go to the back third of the palate. So the border region between middle third and back third of the palate, again, you get a little bit of that bready build up with this one, which I think is really nice. So nice kind of big bready build up there. The base of the back third of the palate, your beer is more, you get more graininess out of the bread crust. And remember, more grainy and bitter flavours come out further back, the sweeter flavours come out further forward. So yeah, good little bit of grainy and bitter flavour to this one. On top of that, you do have a wee bit more of a kind of wholemeal brown bready character. That, and again, that layer is a little bit taller. Then you get the white bready layer above that, which is quite nice. So yeah, good little bit of that going on with this one, which again I can quite appreciate. Um, and then above all of that, above those layers, the bread crust, the brown bread, the white bread, you start to get the more kind of yeasty esters coming out of the beer, and it's this sort of very slightly like farmhousey, woody, crackery bread. So you can feel that it's almost got a little bit of a honeycomb flavour to it, and you can feel that sitting on top of everything else. But yeah, back third of the palate, you can feel the flavour is definitely taller. Then as you come further forward, it just kind of condenses down and squashes together that little bit more. So that covers the malt base in this beer. I think we can move on to the hoppy side of things. So green component first. Back corners of the palate, you've got that nice little bit of earthiness in there, but as you move further forward, you can feel that quite quickly this gives you a lot of kind of green character and a good little bit of spiciness. So you get that nice big sort of spicy floral aromaticity out of this one, and that of course is the Columbus in this beer. Columbus is the bittering hop, absolutely. So yeah, you get that lovely kind of that spicy Columbus floral character as you push further forward along the sides of the palate with this beer. Then round the front curve of the tongue, it's definitely lighter and more. Yeah, it's definitely lighter and more grassy, I would say. And you've got a wee bit of zestiness around the front kind of tip of your tongue with the beer as well, and the grassy flavours. That could be a little bit of something from Centennial, actually. Centennial always gave you a little bit of a kind of grassy zestiness. But yeah, that is quite interesting. So yeah, for me, the bitterness in this beer really builds the further that you go into the aftertaste. But I like that. I do like how that goes together. So on the fruity side of things then, front third of your palate. So the border region between front third and middle third of your palate. Again, you get a nice little bit of that bready build up there. The base of the front third of the palate is more the base of the front third of the palate is more kind of smooth and white bready, and on top of that you get that nice oily bubble where those juicy fruity esters just roll their way out of the beer. So toward the back of that front third of your palate, you do get the more kind of grapefruity, you do get that kind of big grapefruity note out of the beer. And then the base, the back of that front third of your palate, you start to feel, you get the figgy and kind of sultana notes from not from Centennial, from Cascade that I was talking about earlier. So you can feel that there. You've got the grapefruit from the Cascade, and the Cascade really forms the anchor of this. The Cascade really forms the anchor of this West Coast IPA for me. So yeah, back of the front third of your palate, grapefruit. As you move further forward, you can feel the base is like a sort of sultana. Yeah, it's kind of sultana like. It's kind of yeah, how do you say, like, it's like sultana, a little bit of fig, and then above all of that, you have this. You can feel the sort of passion fruity notes from the Simcoe. And then as you move, so on the layer above that, yeah, you can feel the passion fruity notes from the Simcoe. And then as you move further forward into the middle of the front third of your palate, you get the kind of pineapple notes from the Comet. But I think the Comet, I can't remember if the Comet can give you a little bit of passion fruit as well. But yeah, it's Simcoe and Comet in the back half of the front third of your palate with the Cascade underneath. Then as you move into the front half of the front third of your palate, you get the big oily orangey characters from the Amarillo. And then you can feel the Centennial definitely comes out more in the flavour than it does in the aroma, because you can feel that big lemony, zesty character just right behind the kind of front tip of your tongue there. So all of the hops are contributing to this one, and if you know the hops, you will see what each of them are actually doing. They're all visible in the flavour, for me at least. But yeah, I think this beer goes together really nicely in that sense, and it is quite true to the style, I would say, as well. It's kind of true to the old school West Coast IPAs, which I do like, because a lot of breweries these days are brewing these beers with lower bitterness and things. And for me, I get all excited when there's a West Coast IPA, then I drink it, and it's like, yeah, it tastes nice, but it needs bitterness. This one, these guys have put a good bit of bitterness in this one. It's not going to blow the head off you compared to some of the ones we've had in the past, but I think this one does have a good little bit of IBU to it, so it gets a thumbs up from. It does get a thumbs up from me. Yeah, I think this one is a solid beer from Maistila, and again, this is what I say about this brewery. They can do lots of different things, and they're just pretty damn solid. So yeah, pretty awesome. I think we can move on to the mouthfeel of this beer then, just to round off. So for me, yeah, I mean, it's a mid-bodied beer, kind of maybe pushed toward the top end of mid-bodied, in fairness. The carbonation is very, very smooth. Because this brewery is quite far north, you can really feel that this one has a really nice, it's got a nice cleanliness to it. We often say this about Nordic beers. It's quite oily, but at the same time you can just feel the cleanliness of the beer because of the local water underneath it. You can feel that just kind of underpinning the beer. But yeah, with that, you do have a nice bit of bitterness to this beer. This one's at least 70, potentially 80 IBUs. It does give you that, and the bitterness, I think, builds the further you go into the aftertaste. The malt base has a little touch of graininess. It's got a bit of breadiness, and it's also got a good little bit of smoothness and sweetness to it as well, which is what you want from this style. Then the fruity side of the beer, it's got a mix between the more kind of tropical notes. It's got a little bit of dry fruit in there, and you've also got the more oily, zesty, citrusy sort of things too. So I mean, for me, this beer, It's really nicely done. I'd be very curious if they keep this sort of vibe that the beer has. I would love to see these guys do, you know, a big kind of 8% West Coast double IPA at some point, because if they stick to the kind of principles that they were thinking of when they brewed this one, they'd be onto something pretty solid. Like, I like this beer. I do like this beer, but there's just something in my head that says this kind of flavour profile would be a bit better suited to something a bit heavier, you know, like something just a little bit bigger. And of course, it's maybe just the fact that it's a bit more malty as well, if you like. Like for me, I think when it comes to West Coast IPAs, maybe the more biscuity, Pliny the Elder type thing is better with the lower ABV ones, whereas the more oily torpedo side of things I like with the kind of deeper ones. But this is a sort of low ABV kind of session West Coast IPA that leans toward that torpedo side of things. But regardless, this is me nitpicking. It's a very, very nice West Coast IPA, this one. I would love to see a few more from them actually, and see them play around with this style, because they've got something good going on with this one, and this is proper old school, like I say. So yeah, I think we can leave it at that for this one. Well done to Maistila for this. I look forward to trying some more beers from them. I think we've got another two from them in this Riku box, so you'll be seeing those. I think it's a brown ale and an imperial stout, so keep your eyes peeled for those. Those videos will appear at some point fairly soon. But yeah, this one was the batch number 666 or the 999. You need to check what this beer is actually called before we publish it, but this one comes to you from Maistila Panimo in Oulu, a 5.4% West Coast IPA. So pardon me. Yeah, once again, thank you for watching my beer reviews. Until the next time, please like, subscribe, share, all the usual YouTube stuff. Let me know your own thoughts on this beer in the comment section below. Let me know what your favourite beers are from Maistila, and we will return to these guys again. Thank you again to Riku. See you guys again soon. Check out my social media, check out theirs, and yeah, enjoy some nice Finnish beers. Kipis and kiitos.